Hello, Mate to Thrive Nation. Well, we've just come off an incredible meditation process with a new friend and someone that we are getting to know, a privilege to walk with. So it's myself and Ricky from Mate to Thrive, our head coach there. We're going to be with Justin Maguire, who's going to just share his life and his essence and who he is and what he does with regards to autonomic coaching. I shared last night about who am I, and before I give sort of the words on that, because it would be actually maybe a good process to discuss it, but who is Justin Maguire?
Thank you for that introduction. And the word "who am I?"
Yeah,
that's got so much depth to it.
Yeah,
particularly when we see ourselves being part of the greater whole, the great I am, and being fractals of that. To explain the state of inertia which we live in this construct of reality, in this dimension, I'm a person that has played with different dichotomies of life, having gone through fear, aggression, transmuted into love and peace, and on a daily basis face all these components of myself, to the point where, through the liberation of my own self-destruction, I came in to understand my ability and passion within the application of integrative medicine. And the word integrative transcends that of just a combination of homeopathy, Chinese medicine, naturopathy, or allopathy. But it actually explains, as best as it possibly can, the opportunity of healing through all resonance of ourselves, mind, body, and soul. And through the work that I do my best and often succeed in providing people with the opportunity to be in a resonance of harmony. And in that resonance of harmony, to start shifting habits, to start shifting the perspective of themselves, and to inevitably heal themselves. I'm a facilitator of healing. I'm not a healer. The people that I help are the healers. The people that I provide information to are the healers. You listening in on this are a healer. You just need to realize it and have the awakening of that opportunity.
Brilliant. Maybe we can share with Ricky, and then I'll go around. And who is Enrique or Ricky Schach?
I suppose I could put a lot of the same words as Justin did. I've also gone through several deaths and rebirths in my life, for the better. Certainly a lot of fear has turned now into a lot of hope and love and energy in the world now. And I resonate a lot with how Justin has spoken. I talk a lot about how what we're doing is igniting inside everyone their own hero and healer. And that's very much why I call myself the human coach. It's because I think for as much as we complicate the problems, if we just get much more in touch with our humanness, the healing will become the sort of effortless consequence and result of all that.
Brilliant. And I'll just finish that, just discussing with some psychiatrists and psychologists yesterday and articulating in a way that people can understand that SteveStavs is a redeemed or set-free spirit living in a tent called the body. And yes, I am a doctor, but that identity is very small compared to the spirit being that I am. I am a comrades runner. I am a physician. I am a father. I'm a husband. I am a son. But primarily, I'm the set-free, redeemed spirit, sharing essence, uniqueness with this world. So I'm learning to identify with that mainly because everything else in this material world, as a father, as a son, as a husband, can be just changed in the blink of an eye. And so for our identity to be cemented and our purpose and our why and our calling to be shared, it needs to be outside of this physical realm, and it brings a unique frequency. And I really believe that we can only be fully whole as we connect and commune with other people as individuals. We have to form together in unity and alignment. So wonderful to be here, guys. Wonderful to have you, Justin. And possibly give us a little bit of backstory, how you got into health and wellness, and what autonomic coaching is, you know.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. You actually brought so much emotion up and expressing who you really are. I think, you know, I have a very strong communion with the spirit that I've been able to, been gifted in developing, and actually brought tears with how I'm managing of joy and hearing that. My journey started off as it should have. I started off with quite a turbulent upbringing. My innate nature was always to be gentle, but that was challenged from a very young age. From bearing witness to multiple forms of abuse, leading into being a really aggressive and rageful teenager, adopting a mechanism to create armor in partaking in bodybuilding. I appreciate bodybuilding, I love it, but for the reasons I did it for were all for the purpose of self-flagellation. Having gone through that, using scrupulous amounts of steroids, eventually getting involved in using scrupulous amounts of cocaine for a good period of about 9 years, reality came in, and I had a dark night of the soul. And I started studying. I mean, I was studying biochemistry since the age of 19. I have a few foundational degrees and a few BTECs and everything around, but those are just semantics. You know, they're not really the reason, the depth of understanding these tools and the opportunities they provide is going through the experience of it. But once I had my dark night of the soul, where my business was taken, I went into bankruptcy, my custody from my son was taken from me as well, for every due reason. And I thank my ex-wife tremendously so, because she's a wonderful human being. I just wasn't the best human being at that time of my life. But it provided me with an opportunity to look in and to take the ability to respond. And through being humbled, I had to look in. And that's where I found my calling, my affinity for creation and my part in it. And that's when autonomic coaching was birthed. And I had a computer, nowhere to live, no means to make money. I literally went from being worth 3.6 million rand to having 50,000 rand to my name. Living back home with my mom at the age of 31 at the time. And I mean, I left home when I was 19. The best thing ever, the best blessing. I'm so grateful to my mother for that time in my life as well. As humbling as it was, and it was tough, you know, your ego takes a massive knock, especially your identity and your manhood, which was so falsely aligned, because I identified myself as a man through rage in previous years, and that was stripped naked, stripped bare, and in that state, I rediscovered who I really am, and my calling, and through a lot of passion, not work, a lot of passion. I racked up a lot more qualifications, so much so that it would probably take people about 15 years to get there. I was just so motivated, so drawn to my calling and what I needed to do. And I started, after having started autonomic coaching, it was initially called the Banner Mentorship and the Hawk Enterprises, because I still had a little bit of my ego attached to it. And 9 months in, the universe gave me another wake-up call to that. Not as hard. And right after that wake-up call, I changed my company's name to Autonomic Coaching. The reason for that, the autonomic nervous system, the basis of how we see ourselves and see life, the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic drive, fight or flight, rest and digest. And I aim to try and coach the nervous system through different modalities of either a detoxification, removal of entities that cause endocrine disruption, sometimes providing the messages that the body isn't able to produce on its own, whether it be hormones, enzymes, peptides, just in order to create a course directive change.
Brilliant.
To realign autonomic tone through autonomic coaching.
Cool. So to get the system balanced, especially from a nervous system point of view, this, balance, talking about a lot of the, listeners will know about heart rate variability, the number, and obviously we want to use tech. Tech is a tool, but it's actually to lead us in a place where we've got own personal awareness of our mind, our bodies, our spirits, our souls. I think that's where tech is so useful, but it's not the end mean. I think it's just part of the process, part of the journey, and just to facilitate and be kind to people along their journey. I think kindness is a huge part of walking alongside someone, so
Absolutely.
So autonomic balancing, making sure the sympathetic and parasympathetic, one is not evil, one is not wrong, they are absolutely perfect within the body. We talk about eustress and distress, both part of the system. Stress is not bad. If you're listening out there, people have got a negative connotation to stress, but it's built in the body for certain, functions and reasons. So that's really cool to hear. Give us an example, possibly, of a story. People hold on to stories, they do.
Yeah, of course.
And maybe just the emotions of maybe a female or a male or an archetype or possibly a sports person or someone who's just out there, family, just sharing love and peace and harmony wherever they go. But just a story that people can sort of relate to.
The emotional connection to storytelling is so powerful, and there's been so many wonderful journeys along the way, but there are a few that really stand out for me. One in particular is two ladies actually, that I was helping last year in Australia that I no longer do help, which is an absolute testament in its own right.
Absolutely.
Because they've maintained and improved their health on their own accord, becoming their own healers.
Correct.
One had been morbidly obese for close to 40 years. She weighed 167 kilograms at 5'8" when she came to see me. Had no understanding of her ability. Had no awareness of her power, what she was capable of doing. Had complete disillusionment to what this life had to offer for her. Suffice to say, after we worked for about a year, she lost 60 kilograms. But what she gained was so much more than that.
Yeah.
She now walks 25,000 steps a day.
Sure.
Every day. That's her exercise, but that's her meditation. You see, the thing is, we always compartmentalize. We separate meditation from exercise, from nutrition, when actually they're all part of the same continuum.
Yeah.
Having a meal is a form of meditation, if you wish for it to be so.
Sacrament, ceremony,
Absolutely.
setting it apart without rushing.
Without rushing.
Yeah, without being too busy, without making it a goal, without making an achievement, with our Western minds. We make this something we have to do, something we need to do, instead of making it a ceremony.
Absolutely right. I think, the person that I learned so much about the truth behind this was when I was listening to a book, and I read the book from Joe Vitale and Professor Hugh Lin in Ho'oponopono. And Joe asked Professor Lin, what would you like to have? And he said, I want a burger and chips. And he was so flabbergasted by it. He's like the spiritual mentor wanting burger and chips. So he asked him about it, and he said, it's about the appreciation. It's about how you see what you're about to eat.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is also where we get so hung up. There's so many different nutritional protocols out there, which can sometimes enforce the masculine, which is not always a bad thing, creating boundary. But if the masculine is so over-empowering, that boundary becomes a prison. And then we become neurotic.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the biometrics you mentioned. They're a tool, but they're not more powerful than your experience. You can have a wonderful HRV as an example and feel terrible, or feel amazing and have terrible HRV. I think it's so important to go accordance to how you feel, to take on the science, to see what value it has, but to not allow it to become your reality. Because it's only one piece of the puzzle. It's not the puzzle itself.
Well, let's go back to the story. How did you start the journey? Maybe give us a framework of autonomic coaching, because I think it's important.
Sure.
And let's just call her, for interest's sake, Lindsay. That's not her name. But we're talking about Lindsay now. She's lost a lot of weight now. She's 60 kgs down. She's walking 25,000 steps. She's integrated meditation with her walking. Take us through your framework.
So for her, it was really slow. Some you can really go into it and do an overall because they want that. The ego wants that more than anything else. Most of the time it's not necessary. In all honesty, most of the time you can create so much change by putting a few little aids to help the communication in the body. And I believe disease is the outcome of poor communication. So in Lindsay's case, how I start my process with everybody is to have them complete a comprehensive subjective questionnaire, which provides basis of provisional diagnostic outcome. Questionnaires cover all 12 major physiological systems and then 4 subsystems that have an association with them. And then based on that, I can see where the priority lies in terms of their experience and where we warrant further objective investigation through particular blood markers, additional functional tests ranging from everything from DNA to organic acids, stool, hair, all the different elements that we can get from the body. And then from that objective analysis, cross-referencing it and creating correlation to the subjective experience. Because it's very important that we don't treat the numbers, we treat the person. And the numbers can tell the story or not tell the story, whereas when we look at the picture as a whole, we get indications. So we found out with her, there was severe dysautonomia going on. The pituitary wasn't regulated. And instead of throwing her into bioidentical hormonal therapy or putting her into a liver cleanse or getting rid of the candida and the mycotoxins that were ravishing her immune system and really creating havoc in terms of their ability to accumulate oxalates and the devastation that that can do in its own right, I gave her the objective just to move a small amount every day. The objective just to drink a little bit more water every day. And once she was able to achieve that objective, she really started to feel better. And she felt better because she wasn't congested. Paracelsus is my favorite physician of all time. And my favorite quote of his is but one disease, and his name is congestion. So she empowered herself initially by reducing the congestion. And once we did that, we put her through the necessary peptide support to help the hormonal systems. That worked okay, but it needed a little bit more. So she went on a bit of thyroid grain in supporting the liver in the utility of thyroid grain. Massively had a positive impact. Then we went into, once the metabolic systems were well supported and able to support immunity and mitochondrial replication, or mitochondrial DNA replication and the transference of RNA sequences in doing so, which thyroid hormone plays a direct and intimate role in doing. Then we started to look into ways to remove the candida and also the associated oxalates that were coming along with it, but also looking into the reasons as to why. At that point, I didn't understand. So in a way, although I did help her lose a lot of weight, my knowledge at that point was limited in not providing her with all the variables, which later I did when I understood those variables. So it was a bit frustrating because she got down to about 107 and we couldn't break the barrier. Later, I came up with a hypothesis and understanding, and this is through another client of mine, and he'll be happy for me to mention his name, Dr. Dominic Nishvez. And Dominic, when him and I met, it was just an instant connection, like family, complete family. He's a mentor, a friend, student, and sometimes as well. And we feed off each other's knowledge. And he's a wealth of knowledge, transcending so many professors and doctors that I've met along the way because of the humility that he exudes. But in his case, he had a burden of H. pylori, which was throwing off his glutamate decarboxylase activity, just causing those NMDA receptors to be overly excited, throwing off the rhythm within his pituitary and his adrenals. And this was causing quite a lot of compromise in his ability to grow muscle and lose fat in the way which he deserved, because he's very, very disciplined. We fixed that up. He was less anxious, had more flow state energy. To date, he's gained 10 kilograms of muscle. And he says so himself, for 7 years, he was starving himself because he didn't know what was holding him back.
Yeah.
So he was trying to fight it with functional medicine protocols, every direction, detoxification, autophagy, fasting, so on. And they all have their place.
Sure.
They all have their place, but they're not the gospel.
Yeah. Nothing's the gospel.
Nothing's a gospel.
Yeah.
It's all a tool.
Correct. It's all a tool. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so you went deep in the weeds with Dominic. He's been on the show twice, biological dentist. Once again, who is Dominic Nischwitz? I asked that question because only a very small of his part of his identity is a naturopathic doctor and biological dentist. That's just his physical body's manifestation. But, possibly I'm thinking more along those lines. So you went into probably doing some organic acid testing with them, some more functional medicine testing with them, started putting the picture together, started putting the different variables and factors, and did that testing at different stages, obviously, to where he's at. So maybe you just want to mention, even with Lindsay or Dominic Nischwitz, just some of the testing, some of the tools, because people might not have heard these things and they're hearing everything about, obviously issues with like liver cleansers or thyroid function. And I want the podcast to really be a framework and an overview rather than a very sort of deep in the weeds, functional medicine, metabolomics and that type of stuff. Otherwise, it can be quite sort of overwhelming for people. So maybe give us just a framework in what testing people would know some of these things that you did with Lindsay and Dominic.
So with Lindsay, we initially started off with bloods.
Yeah.
I like to use bloods, in particular markers, as a second step provisional.
Yeah.
In certain cases, bloods can tell you what the culprit is, but often it just tells you the outcome of what the culprit is doing in the body.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't necessarily tell you one of the major causative factors, which is where functional testing can come in, from stool telling you the difference of dysbiotic flora, the exact dysbiotic flora, parasitic burden, fungal burden, organic acids, which can even give you a little bit more of an insight, because often, when you take a stool sample, there may not necessarily be metabolic immunological activity going on to facilitate the release of this bacteria or fungus or parasite.
Sure.
In particular, when you do stool testing, to make sure to do it around the full moon cycle to get a clearer indication of what parasitic burden is actually present. So super important. Parasites are like covert operatives. They like to hide.
Incredible.
Especially in the liver.
Yeah.
Especially in the liver. So the tools that I used for Dominic were initially with bloods, as well as for Lindsay, were bloods. What I used for Dominic thereafter was a comprehensive stool analysis combined with an organic acids test.
Okay.
For Lindsay, I used a Dutch test along with the bloods and an organic acids test. I really love the organic acids test because it really gives a holistic picture of what activity is going on in the body. If you think about the word acid in terms of facilitating activity, bases neutralizing activity. So it's all the organic matter innate to the human body as well as foreign. And as our bodies are made only up of 1/10 of human cells. The rest are all bacterial cells.
Sure.
So giving an indication of what the organic matter is actually doing in our bodies, and whether or not the checks and balances of anabolic catabolic activity are maintained in congruence for optimal expression of life, in terms of the outcome of improving cellular function as a whole, regulating AMPK and mTOR and all these wonderful complex terminologies, which aren't as important to getting down to maintaining balance. Balance between creation and death. And life is really about that. It's about embracing both and understanding the value in both. When we don't embrace death in the body, cancer develops, as an example. We do need process of autophagy in order to have healthy cells be born again. This is what we used for Dominic to start with. Later down the line, we also ran a Dutch test as well to see what was going on. More bloods, a few more organic acids. DNA, I did run with Lindsay, and I find DNA to be really insightful. It's interesting to see the probability and possibly the contribution to what's actually going on. But I'm waiting. Waiting for the space to evolve, and it's evolving at a rapid pace. Our microbiome have 150 times greater genes than what we have.
And I agree with you, Justin. I started very, very excited about DNA and really did the DNA analysis and the 3x4 here. And I just found clinical relevance was less valuable than I thought it was. And it's something that I sometimes look at only if we're really stuck with someone. We might be missing the expression of one of those possibilities or proclivities. But I found less value as my rest of my diagnostic skills have improved. I'm not to say that, not doing your DNA, people might have heard that, and it's been very well marketed in my view. And I think it has its place. But we've also got to give people listening out there a priority of where they should go, how they should do things, the right questions that they can ask their practitioner, because a lot of them are doing the DNA analysis, or they're doing the 3x4, they're doing the genetic testing, but they're not really getting the value back on the finances they're spending. And at the end of the day, we do need to be cognizant and aware of that. So, I don't know.
I still think to this day, it is the most underrated and the most valuable test, and that's the organic acids, because it tells you exactly what's going on with organic matter. There's nothing that's hidden from it. It gives you an indication of all, like it's the production of short-chain fatty acids, the utility of ketones, the elements within the tricarbolic acid cycle,
the mitochondrial markers, which are really, really important, people with chronic fatigue and those type of things. So that's cool. Let me go to Ricky, and Ricky, maybe you want to just make a comment or ask a question on incremental steps. I think hearing Lindsay's story, I'm encouraged, and we spent a lot of time this year talking about incremental steps, just giving people a little bit of a stretch. I think the science is based is if you try and increase someone's sort of goals by more than 4%, and I know it's sort of like quite, woo-woo 4%, but if we stretch people too far in too many areas, we find they feel overwhelmed. They don't sustain any of these sort of transformations. I don't like the word goals, but people can relate to that word. So I'm communicating those words that they've heard that word before. But maybe make a comment or ask a question on transformation through incremental steps.
It's been so interesting listening to you guys, and funny how so much of what we're talking about resonates with what happened yesterday in our evening. It's really kind of spooky, actually, how much like what we talked about yesterday. Steve mentioned exactly the genetic thing. But the incremental steps, and I love what Justin said when he was talking about Lindsay, this fictional Lindsay, that he just said, just try to move more. It's so huge, right? For her, because it's so different to anything she'd been doing, and like you said, she'd given up on herself and probably not thought of herself of not being worthy of even trying that. So why are we going to go say change all these millions of things that you have no experience with, as if that's going to set her up for anything but failure? And so just giving that goal, and like you said, she did it. Drink some water, move a bit. She started to feel better. Okay, so why did she start to feel better? Biologically, were there improvements? Surely, if you're drinking more water as opposed to juice or soda, as many people do, you're going to feel better. But a lot of why she felt better is because she accomplished something. She had a win in probably maybe for who knew when her last win would have been, and how those wins just energize their spirit and the heart. And they give you that motivation to keep going. And I mean, all of us have been working with people for a long time. And I think the number one reason people fail at transforming or making changes or sustaining changes is because they're trying to do too much. And if we just shrink the change into manageable steps, they're more obviously manageable to do, like the elephant, right? How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time. But it's only them. It's also because of the confidence it gives you to say, well, I can do this. I did this, so I can now do the next step, and I can do the next step. And it's such a resonance of how we also are working. And I think it's just such a beautiful way. I think how we're all moving towards this understanding of it's not about like setting people up to fail. It's about setting them up to succeed. Because if we actually give them too much, it's not them who failed, it's us. We're the ones who put them in a position that was not achievable. So I think it's really interesting to see so much resonance here. And I have a question actually for Justin. I saw on your website, you were saying that you're helping people sort of dispel myths of health and diet that you think are negative, or what do you think some of those major ones are?
Thank you for the question, Ricky. The myths behind diet. Firstly, the first three letters in the word is terrible. Doesn't evoke any confidence, right? But it's all about lack. It's all about taking something from someone. The concepts behind diet and the way in which it's been projected and taught. It's all about abstinence. And when somebody feels such a lack in themselves, to tell them to take things away from them without giving them something else in return, you're only going to set them up for, relapse, if you want to call it that. And yes, food is a drug. It can be. It's the most powerful drug that we consume every day. And the most available. So I think the biggest myth is that some have an idea that ketogenic diets are the holy grail. Others that fasting is the holy grail. Others that zone diet is the holy grail. Carnivore diet, vegan diets. And in reality, they all have a part to play in components of their design. But if we're too regimented and we're too structured, that membrane that I believe, from my friend Robert Cavanaugh, he actually depicted this really, and I have to give him kudos on this. He depicted it so eloquently. The membrane represents that of the masculine, providing security, but also providing provision what things are allowed to come in and what things are allowed to go out. And the inner contents of that are the feminine, providing creation, providing life. When we try to evoke too much regimen in our lives, the masculine can create so much saturation to our membranes that we develop disease. And when our membranes can't communicate because they can't receive or release anything, in essence, a part of ourselves starts to die. And either neurosis can develop or disbelief in potential and opportunity. So a lot of people help, they expect dietary recommendation, which I give them. But often along the journey, especially with my coaching clients, majority of them don't stick to it. And they have such an open relationship with me, and they come up and say, I haven't been able to stick to it. I said, that's actually to be expected. That's fine. Understand something. It's one thing to have a concept of the goal. There's another thing to be present in what it is that you need to do in the moment. And I asked them, when you weren't able to stick to it, what were the emotions going through you before you decided to have something off plan, as an example? And initially, they had no idea what those are. But when you make them more aware of it, and when it happens again next time round, then we have something to work with. Because emotions, energy and motion, can be understood. And we can feel it in different parts of our being, in different parts of our body. And it's often when we start to become more intuitive with ourselves and understand where energy is congested or where energy needs attention, when we look to release that energy through spiritual practice, through exercise practice, whatever modality feels comfortable for a person to do. I know spiritual practice can be quite daunting for a lot that aren't aware of it. That's not the only way in which to approach it. But whatever modality feels comfortable. So that's where the myths lie. The myths lie in the restriction that is projected that if you do not do something, you're going to be a bad boy or bad girl, and you're not going to have success in life. If you don't work yourself till you feel like your eyes are bleeding, you're not going to have success in life. If you don't sacrifice self, or even worse yet, self-sacrifice, you're not going to receive love. And these are notions that are false. And I just came back from an ayahuasca journey. I am a firm believer in plant medicines and appreciate them for all that they are. And after the journey, we had communion. Everybody partook in the journey. And there's this one young lad, really incredible, young, powerful black man that's on the verge of just breaking through and creating so much in this world. And I saw the potential of what can come from his life. And he said, I don't know if I want hope. And I asked him, what part of you says that? What part of you says that you don't want hope? Feel into it. What part of it says it? He says, I don't know. So I said, so if you don't know, is it a lie or is it a truth? Is that coming from you or coming from somewhere else? And eventually he agreed, he said it's a lie. And I asked him, do you want to believe a lie of who you are, or do you want to be empowered by your truth? And from that moment alone, he changed. In 2 days, he changed. And he's been messaging me now. He's more motivated. He's re-enrolled into his law program, which he actually dropped out of because he didn't believe that he could become a lawyer. He's re-enrolled. He's motivated. And yeah, sure, he's going to have challenges come up. It's not the last time he's going to be challenged. But that's the question we need to ask ourselves, is what we've been told, is it our truth or is it a lie?
Yeah,
Instead of just accepting it.
Yeah, it's crucial. I think well said and well articulated. I don't know if you've got any comments afterwards, Ricky, but hope is a force. Hope is a field. Hope carries a substance. It carries power. And so does belief. And I think maybe the question I've got for you, Justin, is how do we facilitate as guides? I see myself as a teacher. I was discussing last night, Hippocrates, who I've got a lot of respect for, said, the greatest medicine of all. And if you're listening out there, Lindsay, a type of Lindsay, a type of Karen, a type of Steve, a type of Bob, the greatest medicine of all is to teach people how not to need it. And so we are teachers so that they allow themselves to heal, that they can be not the captains of their healing, because I think that has a hierarchical nature, but they can journey along with their body to heal. But let's talk about hope being a force in a field, how we facilitate hope, because I think that is crucial as an internal driver. Let's talk about belief. I mean, belief is, when I say that, I get really emotional, because if we can take people along a journey of belief, the tools become easy.
Yeah.
The process becomes a lot easier.
Absolutely.
But the collective consciousness that is out there, that we're seeing and feeling, and I mentioned this last night as well, on the 26th of March 2020, on the first day of lockdown, I encountered a field and a force of fear and anxiety and uncertainty in people that I haven't experienced in 24 years of coming to this office every single day. And so the collective consciousness, as much as the light is rising and hope and belief is rising, there's a greater collective consciousness of fear in people, and uncertainty and anxiety. And we've seen it. We work with corporates, we've worked with patients, we've worked with clients, we've worked with CEOs, we've worked with domestic workers. So we've got parts of Made to Thrive. We work with Hope Risen, which is an anti-human trafficking organization. So we've worked with the low of the low, and there's a lot of anxiety, uncertainty, and fear out there. So to be facilitators and beings of hope and bringing belief is, I think, such a fundamental part. So maybe you want to go for it, Ricky, and then
I'll just have a quick comment before passing off to Justin. But it's interesting, the comment. There was a super powerful story you shared, because I know what that's like. I've been to the places where I actually also didn't want hope. But you say it's true, it's a lie, but it's a lie you tell yourself because you're so afraid of what that means.
Yeah.
To hope again, how scary that can be when you seem so hopeless. To actually believe you can get there, you'd rather not. There's a part of you that's telling you no. But I think, coming from what Steve's talking about, how do you then inspire that hope? How do you bring that belief? And I think the story you shared is illustrative of that. You didn't try to raw it into him.
No.
You didn't try to tell it to him.
I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club.
Yeah. You asked him a question. You said, is this true or is this false?
Yeah.
So you reflected it back to him for him to have to now question it deeply inside of himself. And because he then realized, he made the connection himself, oh, it's false. That's the entirety of the difference. Instead of you saying to him, no, that's false, he came to the realization himself, and that's what brings the belief, because he found it within himself, and therefore there's that automatic embodying of knowing it's true.
Absolutely. Thank you. You described that perfectly. It's exactly what he got from it. He got to reclaim his own sovereignty. I think we've been preached to our whole lives. We're brought up as children wanting to play outside, having to sit behind desks and be still. And being told that we're disobedient because we can't sit still, because our bodies weren't designed to do so. We put children on Ritalin because they act out, because they're just trying to be natural.
Mm.
We tell people that they are bipolar because they're actually incorporating, expressing all their multitude of emotions. And instead of teaching them how to understand them, we tell them that because they're acting out of society's construct and lanes, that there's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
How do we instill hope? Pain is a wonderful teacher. And pain, especially with COVID, having wreaked so much pain in so many lives, from people, from loved ones lost to abilities lost in certain individuals. Pain is such a wonderful teacher because, and I say wonderful, not to be condescending to people's struggle. That's not my intention at all, or to belittle that. It's real, and I have empathy to a person's pain, but it's a necessity. Because pain evokes an internal dialogue. And as a collective, as people that facilitate healing, we can create healers in our patients by asking them about the intricacies of what that conversation really has to say, rather than just allowing it to play out and play through their lives, but rather for them to play into the conversation and understand the lessons that it can provide for their lives. And I think that's where communication, reciprocity of communication, is so vitally important. You know, we meet people on a safe turf where we talk about facts, lab reports, why they're feeling the way they're feeling from a physiological perspective, which is useful, but it's also comical in a way, because it's so much more deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we provide them with that sense of security and safety for long enough so that they can get into a space where they can be open and actually share the inner dialogue that pain has brought up, and which we can unpack and actually provide empowerment through that experience. Light is born through shadow.
Yeah.
You need
Is that
shadow.
not predicated, sorry to interrupt you, is that not predicated on this statement that has become so real to me over, I would probably say, since my parents left me as an 18-year-old, something that's been in my soul. Everything that happens to me is for my good.
Absolutely. Life happens for us.
Yeah.
And we can use that tool to either destroy ourselves or to build ourselves. But be under no illusion, it's not the destruction, it's the hammer.
So if someone wants to take that on, believe that statement, because I think that's often the foundation, you know, people are just really trying to resist or fight any discomfort, displeasure. We live in this very dopenergic life where everything has to feel good and everything has to be happy, and the struggle is not seen as good and beneficial. What about that very important pillar for people to take on? And I know people just don't want to hear this, you know, because pain is something that we have to really embrace as good in our lives, as you've said.
Very, very much so. Yesterday and today, integrative the nature of having done ceremony, whatever ceremony you do, regardless if it's plant ceremony, meditation, a silent retreat, the integration can bring a lot of things up. And I had immense amount of anxiety. Yes, I had immense amount of anxiety yesterday. Instead of running away from it, and I'm also still learning, and I'm grateful to be learning. And in the past, I would try to biohack myself out of it, right? Do whatever I can to break the anxiety, but this time I didn't. And I bared witness to the anxiety, not to try and unpack it, not to try and deconstruct it. I just bared witness to what it was doing to my body and where I was feeling it in my body. And I said, that's okay. It's okay to feel anxious. And I went about my day, and I still fulfilled what I was able to do, even with this emotion coming through me. And when I allowed that to happen, I realized there was a very clear message that Spirit asked of me to do, to write a letter to give to schools, to start motivational speaking to teenagers about my life story.
Yeah, brilliant.
And how education, conventional and unconventional, liberated me from self-destruction. But I didn't take action on it in the morning. And it was only until 2:30 yesterday that the penny dropped, the epiphany came in, and I wrote the letter, and guess what? The anxiety went away.
Because the physical was manifesting something that the spiritual had spoken.
Absolutely.
And instead of coming into alignment with that, your body said, it was a warning bell, it was a sign that we need to accept, not resist. When we resist our emotions, we say they're negative and they're bad, and they're negative emotions. Even the word negative emotions is labeling something that is actually part of our humanity as people, and it does not carry that connotation, because everything that is working for your good.
100% right. Negative have dense frequency. But if you think of how you build a house, foundation needs to be dense.
Yeah.
You need to feel it. You need not necessarily always have to understand it, but you need to feel it and look to the lessons. That sometimes it's not always in the understanding of the reason why it's happened, but rather the message that it's trying to tell you in its happening.
Yeah, good.
Which is empowering.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's the thing. We're so hell bent. Excuse the play on that word, but we really are. We create our own hell because we want to avoid our truths. We want to avoid the energy that's not or is in motion in our bodies. Emotions. This is the problem with conventional psychiatry, is that there's so many labels to put people in boxes, and yet we forget to step back and ask ourselves, what is this person's spiritual journey? Why is it that they're going through what they're going through? You know, possibly is the expression of schizophrenia, as hard as it is to go through, possibly is it not the soul's incarnation in order to undo so much family lineage curses? And be able to understand the different facets of our expression. Because I don't know about you, but I have many components of my personality, many aspects of myself, many facets.
Sure.
And some have just stronger ability to express them to a greater extent. Does that mean that we should ridicule, should label, should medicate them, or support them in their understanding? And transmute that into a higher position of power, one that can liberate so many lives. So that's a big question to ask: is what are we running away from? We're running away from our own sovereignty and our own truth, and we're running into a extraterrestrial state of living, which we've constructed around us. You know, there's very few humans in this world that actually live a terraformed life.
Yeah.
Everything is foreign. Cars we drive, the houses we live in, even to the extent the air we breathe.
Yeah, it's true.
And we keep on trying to run away. But it's time to stop running away and start running too, in support of a collective. And the wonderful thing about this is we don't have to do it on our own.
Yeah.
We never had to.
Yeah. And we shouldn't be trying to do it on our own.
No.
That's one of the greatest deceptions, isn't it? That you can do it alone. But that's the Western mind thinking, that I'll build my kingdom at the expense of yours. I'll make sure my kingdom's in a good space, my castle's in a good space at the expense of yours. And I see what you bring me and not who you are. So maybe make a comment on, because one of the biggest things to help people become aware, and I get comments from both of you guys, about just the noise of technology. You know, people have noted that the amount of stimulation we get in a single day is the equivalent of someone in the 1400s in their entire life. Okay, so we have this noise, we have these devices, and what I think it does is it just creates this consistent barrage of busyness, of rushing, of frequencies that don't allow us to step back and transcend. I love the word transcend, to step out of and to assess this anxiety that I'm feeling. I can accept that. that's a part of me. That's a part of me. I don't need to resist that. Now the question is, can I sit with that to discover why that is manifesting now without rushing and having a dopamine hit from Facebook or a dopamine hit from Netflix or, a dopamine hit from an email or waiting for the phone to ping. It's just this consistent noise of technology that is cluttering our minds that we can't really escape from. And I love meditation, but is it not that we often have to be in a consistent meditative state because things are happening the whole time? We cannot just allow 20 minutes or an hour in the morning and then carry on rushing and running in this very physical, dominated world.
No, definitely not. I'll let Ricky. I'll let you start with this one. I've got
such a big subject, right?
Absolutely huge.
So I don't even know where to start. Who's that great guy who did the social network thing on Netflix? He works for the Human Institute. He was an old Google guy. It's got he has that great quote, something about how we have sort of paleontologic software, but we're trying to live in like a godlike world. Effectively, like in a simpler way, is how we become very smart as humans, but we haven't got the wisdom. The wisdom hasn't caught up. And I think anybody who thinks technology is not causing transformative, revolutionary, perhaps even annihilating forces, I think they're deluding themselves. So I'm certainly not a techno-utopian by any means.
No.
If anything, I think we need to be very wary of what's happening. And like I say, I think the solutions are going to be more found in humans because we keep trying to become more and more the tech, the curve, exponential, logarithmic. But how much human development have we really done?
Yeah.
And that's what I really think where we have to focus the revolution, the next age, right? What are the ages, agricultural age, industrial age, this revolution, tech revolution. I think the next revolution has to be the human revolution. I think that's the one that we all need to be focusing on. And I think all of us know here that we are way more powerful than we are, I think, even close to understanding.
Absolutely.
So the tech is such an interesting topic because I do though want to say, because Steve obviously works biohacking, we as Made to Thrive, that's our X factor. We have these tools, and they're not tools I ever used in my journey. So when I started working with Steve, he was very adamant on it, and he pushed that to encourage me to try it. And I told him why I was resistant. It's because I know I have neurotic orthorexic tendencies. I know I can get caught up in that in a way that's harmful for me. But because now we worked with the corporate group, and I think Steve and I have been taken aback by how profound the feedback has been for us. And I saw the value in Steve's wisdom there about the technology, and that you can have wisdom about technology if you use it in the right way, like we've said, like it's a tool, because it was clear how those tools created an awareness of those people that will now forever change the way they live their lives. So I think the key, because we're not going to reverse this. There's too many forces, there's too much money at play that's going to keep pushing tech. But I think there are enough people who are starting to see, maybe I don't need to be doing this all the time. Maybe I should turn my phone off. Like I turn my phone off at 7:30 and that's it. And I don't compromise that, and I think it's an important thing. And I've had talks with people in my family about, they're like, what if this happens, what if that happens? Like Steve also says, there's ways around that. Get a landline if it's a true emergency. Give it to the 10 people in your life who really need it. But for the most part, that can be in the morning, and you can pick that up the next day. And we have to be very aware of putting in those sort of practices to make sure that technology doesn't override our life, because it's seductive and it's built to be seductive. So it's such a overarching and interesting topic. But I think all of us, the message really is, like the thing is, right, if you're not paying for it, you're the product. And that was one of the most powerful things I ever heard when I realized, I'm the product. And it changed it for me. And I really got off Facebook, like basically once I found that out about 6-7 years ago. So I think I'll hand it over to you now.
you're beautifully articulate in what you were trying to explain, what you did, what you eloquently did explain. Technology, I don't believe, is a new occurrence. I was recently watching on Netflix as well, and I think we might show a bit of contradiction that we watch on Netflix, but believe in me, it's within limits. But watching Netflix, I was watching Graham Hancock's series, Ancient Apocalypse. I think if anybody is under the illusion that what we're seeing today has only come around today, might be in for a bit of a rude awakening if we don't learn the lessons from our ancestors.
Yeah, sure.
Technology has been the birth and destruction.
Absolutely.
And if you look in the Vedic cultures and the Kalpas, they explicitly explain this as how we go around in cycles, perpetual cycles, to keep learning, to keep experiencing, possibly for the evolution of souls to a certain degree. I always am reminded of a phrase. I'm not religious, but I believe in Yeshua, and I believe in Buddha, and I believe in his ascended masters and teachers. And he said, but if ye have faith of a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Technology creates reliance and takes away that faith that we have in ourselves. Now, that doesn't mean technology is evil. What is evil is the reliance that we develop in it. We've moved now to the age of Aquarius, in which we have the opportunity, and it's an opportunity. It's definitely not gospel that this is going to happen, but we have the opportunity to make it happen, where we have a merger of technology and spirit coming into one continuum for the evolution of the human, for the human being, and emphasis on the word being, present being. There's a huge new emergence. I was speaking to Byron from Sun Moon Seed. He's my practitioner, friend, teacher, brother, on where the plant medicines, in particular ayahuasca, started. And it actually started during times of struggle and war between the tribes. And these ancient technologies, in terms of the medicines, came into being to create love and harmony and open up the heart space so that people can live integrated with one another, rather than separated from the differences of culture, race, color, creed, ideas, and so on and so forth. And there's a re-emergence of that happening. There's a reason why after all these centuries, all of a sudden more and more of us are becoming more inclined and inquisitive about the remedy of plant medicine, because it is a technology, but it's a technology that integrates modern technology with spiritual technology into a continuum that we really need. So yes, we are going through a challenging but beautiful time, and it's up to us.
Yeah,
it really is up to us.
Brilliant. I think incredible podcast. We're gonna have possibly last comments from everyone. I would say what I'm seeing now, the biggest problem is disconnection between cells, disconnection between systems, disconnection between people, disconnection between cultures. And so if you're listening out there and you're a Lindsay, you're a Karen, you're a Steve, you're a Bob, connect with Justin, connect with a coach, connect with someone that you can build a bridge of trust. Because I think the human part of thriving, the human part along your journey is far greater than anything else. Who can facilitate your healing, who can facilitate and teach and show and demonstrate and be the example for you. Because we all need mentors, we all need people of light that are shedding their light and their essence as they go forward. So maybe last comments from as we wrap up. I know we've gone on, but it's been a beautiful time, and time in this quantum space has run on beautifully, which is always a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah, I always have told people for a long time, disconnect to connect. Disconnect from the tech, from all that stuff, and connect, like you say, with people, with places, with the earth, with nature, with animals, with your friends, with your family. That's why I started that tradition at my house. I think culturally appropriating in the best way, where I have a somewhat Shabbat at my house. I try to host every Friday and just say to people in my world, like, you're just welcome to come. And I'll have some food ready, and it'd be great if you bring something, because I just want to encourage people to spend more time with people. I want them, because it's so easy to be atomized and to be on your own now. It's so easy, and it's so seductive. So I'm trying to bring that connection back, because I think connection is the way through this all. Because we can't. I mean, I've got a lot of ideas. I have an idea. I've even like, why can't we plan this urban world better? Why do we have to have these big plots? Why can't we have 4 or 5 houses together with communal space?
Absolutely.
It seems so, and not only do I think it seems obvious and easy, I think so many more people would want that.
Yeah.
And I've been reading more and more about this world of communal living, of rewilding, and as much as people find fear and a bit of resistance at the beginning, they always realize how much more natural and obvious and correct that feels. So I think it's so important for all of us to find, like, this is, I like the hero's journey very much. And this is, you have to find the allies. And we have to find our allies as how we start this. Even though we have to be cognizant of, like, I think yin and yang has been a lot here. I think a lot of us, I think all 3 of us have had very yang. We can push yang. We've all seen how that can fall, and we have to find the yin. And it's the same with both, because you talk about mentors. The first mentors I found in my life were all through technology. They were all through podcasts and through YouTube. And when I was going through the hardest part of my life, where I was the most alone I will ever be in my life, when the people around me actually couldn't really help me because I was just suffering so much, they could not relate to how bad it was. I found so much love and hope and inspiration in those people who taught me so much, and they became my mentors. So we have to connect, and we have to just be conscious and aware of how to use everything around us, because we're not going back to the Stone Age. We're here now. We have to just be ready to incorporate and integrate everything as we move forward into, like you say, this age of Aquarius, because it's not like science and religion have always been separate.
No.
Some of the greatest scientists of all time were deeply religious and mystical people.
Absolutely right. I mean, Hippocrates and Socrates, big time. Newton.
About the rapture.
Exactly. I need to read that. Community. I truly believe that we are all fractals of cosmic consciousness. And the reason as to why we've come into this existence is because in order for the universe to understand itself, it needs to understand all components of itself, just like we try to understand all our emotions and all of our multitude of personalities, which we have. We can be angry, we can be loving, we can be peaceful, we can be kind, we can be cruel, we can be so many different aspects of ourselves. And opportunity is there. And in community, it's a way in which, in essence, the universe congregates and comes closer together. So I think it's very, very, very important. I think that's where a lot of the power lies. And, furthermore, when it comes to a lack of communication, I'll just emphasize what I said to start with. Disease is the outcome due to poor communication in every which form. Dis-ease, discomfort, a difficult experience is the outcome due to poor communication within cultures, communities, within the human body itself. When we're in a state of disease, we've lost the ability to communicate. We've lost the ability to speak our truth, to know our truth, and to be open to other truths that can actually give us more insight into facets that we didn't even think about. And when we try to do this on our own, again, we're limiting ourselves to the outcome of collective consciousness. We all can understand a piece of the puzzle so intimately well. But wouldn't it be so wonderful if we can all bring our different pieces together and develop an amazing picture out of it?
Brilliant.
Thank you.
What a great podcast. Just wanted to declare favor and blessing over you, that you would absolutely live out your purpose, your essence, who you are, what you bring to this mighty, mighty world. And so thank you, Justin Maguire. And just let us know where, or let the people know where they can connect with you, they can reach out to you. I think that's important.
Thank you very much, Steve. I really appreciate that. It meant a lot. Thank you for doing that. You can reach out to me. Sorry, I had to take a moment there. You can reach out to me either through Instagram, which is autonomic_coaching. If you're not social media inclined, you can reach out to me via email, justin@autonomiccoaching.com. And there's autonomic, and then there's an additional coaching, C for coaching. So the C is not, in essence, hyphenated. So it's two words combined. Else, you can reach out to my network, to Steve. And I'm sure he'll be happy to pass on my detail as well. For anybody out there that's struggling with self-belief, struggling to fight through the darkness that you're going through, I want you to know that there's so much beauty waiting for you.